Right-wing influencers were up in arms last night over the prospect of President Trump going to war with Iran because of the Iranian nuclear program. Now, it's worth mentioning, since this fact seems to be lost on some people, that the United States is not, in fact, at war with Iran. But these influencers and pundits were furious that Trump might go to war with Iran. This, they said, would constitute a betrayal of the MAGA movement, a betrayal of everything President Trump campaigned on and was elected to do. Trump, they pointed out, was elected on getting us out of wars in the Middle East.
You cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon.
When did Trump suggest that Iran was even on his mind?
Everybody, no nuclear weapons. You can't give them nuclear weapons.
It'd be one thing if Trump had campaigned on stopping Iran's nuclear program.
Don't let Iran have nuclear weapons. That's my only thing I have to tell you today.
But for Trump to just foist this policy on us, completely out of the blue.
Including Iran, they can't have a nuclear weapon. That's all. They can't have nuclear weapons. It's too destructive, too powerful. They can't have it.
Without any warning.
I just don't want them to have a nuclear weapon.
Well, it's a betrayal, wouldn't you say? What else do you call it when you say one thing on the campaign trail?
They cannot have a nuclear weapon. That was the only thing. The one thing I said, you cannot have.
And another thing when you get into office.
You can't let Iran have nuclear weapons.
Now, I don't want the U.S. to get bogged down in another war in the Middle East. I think many of the arguments regarding Iran are bogus, as I've said repeatedly on the show. But it also seems strange to blame President Trump for betraying promises he never made to keep us out of a war he didn't launch. You would think that after 10 years of fake crises regarding Trump, people would have learned by now to take a few deep breaths when the latest panic drops. But no, Panicans abound. I'm Michael Knowles. This is The Michael Knowles Show. Welcome back to the show. Justin Bieber might be placed in a conservatorship. This could be Britney Spears all over again. We will get into it first, though. I want to tell you about Balance of Nature. Go to balanceofnature.com. Use promo code Knowles, K-N-O-W-L-E-S. You've heard me talk about Balance of Nature many times before. That's because Balance of Nature fruits and veggies is the most convenient way to get whole fruits and vegetables daily, especially if you're focused on creating a healthier, happier lifestyle. Nature's pretty good at giving us the nutrients we need through our fruits and vegetables. So Balance of Nature takes fruits and veggies, freeze dries them, turns them into a powder, and puts them into a capsule. You take your fruit and veggie capsules every day, and then your body knows what to do with them. Balance of Nature is just one ingredient of a balanced lifestyle, has no intention to replace a healthy diet, exercise, sleep, or any other healthy habits. It is intended to be used in concert with other healthy habits, especially for me, someone who's on the road a lot. When sweet little Lisa isn't making me my fruits and veggies, it's nice to have a way to, make sure I get them on the go. I don't just collapse from ill health. Go to balanceofnature.com. Use promo code Knowles, K-N-O-W-L-E-S for 35% off your first order as a preferred customer. Plus, get a free bottle of fiber and spice. That is balanceofnature.com. Promo code K-N-O-W-L-E-S. The war in Iran is heating up. There was a clip, this was pretty wild one, of Iran state television yesterday. So they got the lady in the, not quite a burqa. What is that called? Is that a niqab? Whatever. It's not full burqa, but it's a lot of cloth. She's on Iran state TV, and as she's broadcasting live, apparently a missile hit the studio. It just cuts to commercial. You couldn't have scripted that. I mean, that was straight out of Hollywood. So this war, if you hadn't noticed already, is not. This is not like previous Israeli or American actions against Iran. This is not just taking out a top Iranian general, even like we saw from Trump in the first term. This is not just Israel, blowing up some pagers or something. This war is clearly aimed at regime change. This is a full-scale war. And so right now, I think you've got good cop, bad cop. The good cop is President Trump saying, please, mullahs, please, Ayatollah, please make a deal to give up your nuclear program and we'll let you live. And the Israeli bad cop is saying, nope, we're taking you all out. This is not, we're going all the way now. You got Trump on the one hand saying, I gave you 60 days to make a deal. Day 61, we're letting the Israelis go in there. Please come. It's not too late. Please make a deal. And then the bad cop Israeli saying, yeah, we're going to blow up your TV stations while they're broadcasting. We are not joking. This is not merely saber rattling. And you've got people scratching their heads because Trump, having established this amazing coalition of people who have disparate political views, Trump has every side scratching their heads because the hardest war hawks in the country support Trump. Also, the most fervent doves and isolationists also support Trump. Is this weird coalition. He's managed to do it. Just as on other issues, you've got the most pro-tariff people in the country. You got the biggest free traders, both supporting Trump. You got Jews supporting Trump. You got Muslims supporting Trump. You have all sorts of people. He's done a great job assembling a coalition that previous Republicans had not been able to assemble. And now they're scratching their heads. Is Trump a dove? Is Trump a hawk? Is Trump an isolationist? Is Trump a neocon? Is Trump a this? Is Trump? Trump is none of those things. Trump is not particularly ideological, which I think is a good thing. As a conservative, I try to eschew ideology. I think ideology is modern and lib and bad. So when Trump is looking at the Iran issue, I don't think he's considering regime change and the end of history and a community of liberal democracies spanning the entire globe. I don't think he's saying that. I think he's thinking, as he said on the campaign trail, forever, we're not going to let Iran get a bomb. That's all he's thinking. He's thinking in a very practical, prudential way. And ideologues who are today conveniently forgetting when Trump said for many, many years, I think all of those clips I just played were only from the most recent presidential campaign, but he's been saying it for a decade. He says, we're not going to let Iran get a bomb. We're not going to let Iran get a bomb. We're not going to let Iran get a bomb. So is it any surprise that Trump is going in using the military? That said, I don't think he has the ideological vision of the neocons of the Bush II administration to say we're going to remake the entire Middle East. We're going to establish liberal democracy there. Because the question, just as I've defended Trump on, being open to being a little more aggressive in foreign policy, if you want to be able to cut deals and negotiate, you need to have a credible threat of violence there. That's speak softly and carry a big stick from Teddy Roosevelt, one of President Trump's favorite Republicans. While I'm totally defending that as a tactic, we then have to ask for the people who are clamoring for regime change. Well, okay, what comes next? What comes next? If you want to go all the way, you want to throw out the Ayatollah. I don't like the Ayatollah. That guy's crazy. You want to throw out the mullahs. I don't care for the mullahs. That's fine. What comes next? This is always the question in these regime change wars in the Middle East. Do you have a plan for what comes next? Because I don't want the United States occupying Iran for the next 20 years. I certainly don't want that. Is the plan we're going to bring back the Crown Prince, Reza Pahlavi? Okay, is that really going to work? Okay, that's fine. We had a good relationship with his dad, with the Shah. So, okay, I guess that's fine. I have no problem with that. Is that going to work? Is that really going to work? This is what I thought when Bashar Assad was ousted. I said, look, everyone talks about how terrible Assad was. I don't know. We got this like ISIS lunatic who just came in and took over Syria. Is that better? I'm open-minded. Just tell me, what's the plan? That, I think, is what's on a lot of Americans' minds. It's not that Americans have some love for, I think most Americans at least don't have some love for the Ayatollah. It's not that most Americans are reflexively anti-Israel. Most Americans are supportive of the state of Israel. But Americans have a totally legitimate trepidation about interfering in the Middle East because of the experience of being bogged down in Iraq and Afghanistan for years and decades. So what's the plan? That's the question. For the hardcore regime change hawks, what is the plan? Because there's a lot of war propaganda There's a lot of propaganda coming out of the Iranian side, which is backed up by Russia and China and other people that we don't generally get along with. And there's propaganda coming out of our side, and certainly out of the state of Israel. Bibi Netanyahu went on ABC News yesterday, and I felt overplayed his hand a little bit.
It's Tel Aviv, tomorrow it's New York. I understand America first. I don't understand America dead. That's what these people want. They chant death to America. So we're doing something that is in the service of mankind, of humanity, and it's a battle of good against evil. America should and does stand with the good. That's what President Trump is doing, and I deeply appreciate his support.
Okay, all right. Laying it on a little thick, Bibi, okay? I understand America first. I don't understand America dead. America dead. America, that's it. If we don't go in now and go all in on your regime change war in Iran, America's going to be dead. What's your evidence for that? Well, Iran doesn't like America and is going to get a nuclear bomb. First of all, we've been hearing Iran is on the cusp of a nuclear bomb for 45 years now. And second of all, Iran is pursuing a nuclear bomb. There's no question about that. But even Netanyahu himself has said Iran is not days or weeks away from a nuclear bomb. Iran is probably a year away for a nuclear bomb, or maybe more. But even beyond that, there are plenty of countries who hate us who have nuclear bombs. Pakistan harbored Osama bin Laden for 10 years. North Korea, definitely saber rattles with the United States. North Korea has a nuclear bomb. So I don't want a nuclear Iran. I want to take practical, prudent steps to stop Iran from having a nuclear weapon. Basically entirely with Trump on that part of the issue. But don't tell me, come on, don't try to fool me, okay? Don't treat me like I'm a dummy. Iran poses an existential threat to the state of Israel. I get why the state of Israel is going in. Iran does not pose an immediate existential threat to the United States. Just doesn't. Iran wants regional dominance. So there are plenty of strategic reasons why the U.S. doesn't want that to happen, or why Saudi Arabia doesn't want that to happen, or why even Qatar doesn't want that to happen, or why Bahrain doesn't want that to happen, or why Turkey doesn't want that to happen. I get all that. Certainly why Israel doesn't want that to happen. But in times of war, the propaganda comes on real thick. And you're getting it from both sides in this war. So you're getting it certainly from the regime change side. If we don't go in right now, the whole world is going to end because Iran has a nuclear weapon and is going to blow up the whole United States. Not quite. And then on the flip side, if the United States, the global hegemon, in any way flexes its muscle or in any way helps to guide the affairs of the Middle East, then we're going to get bogged down in a forever war that goes on for 5 centuries. Also not quite there. Also not quite there. And this is why it's not just carrying water for the admin. This is why I have consistently supported President Trump since 2016. While many people were Johnny-come-latelys, or they supported him, they didn't support him, then they did support him, then they didn't support him. You've seen a lot of that on the American right. But one of my absolute favorite things about Trump as a political figure is that he is not particularly ideological. And I think there's a deep philosophical basis for not being all that ideological. Michael Oakeshott, one of my favorite more recent political philosophers, has this line. He says, ideology is the formalized abridgment of the supposed substratum of rational truth contained in the tradition. What a wordy, highfalutin academic definition of ideology, but it's really good. It's the formalized abridgment of the supposed substratum of rational truth contained in the tradition. You can't possibly sum up society in that kind of way, but that's how the modern people all want to do. They want to have 5 bullet points on the back of a napkin. No. Trump is a little more based on his gut. Trump is a little more based on history than ideology. Trump is very simple. We don't want to go remake the entire world. That way lies madness. But we don't want our enemies to get nuclear weapons. So we're going to have a negotiated approach. And I think that's what there are ideologues who want full-on regime change and want to sprout up Madisonian democracy in Persia. Probably not going to happen. And there's some who want a good deal that protects the interests of the United States and allows for stability in the region. That's different. Some people want revolution there. Some people want stability. America is the global hegemon, the global empire. I think it is in our interest to establish stability. And however we're going to get that done, that I think is what Trump is going to pursue. Now, President Trump loves gold. I like gold too. I want to tell you about Birch Gold. Text Knowles to 989898. We are days away from what has been dubbed the Rio Reset, the greatest threat to the U.S. dollar's dominance in over 80 years. On July 6th, BRICS nations, Russia, China, India, Iran, and many more, are expected to announce the launch of a new international supercurrency fully backed by gold or other commodities. This is part of their long-term plan to supplant the U.S. and the dollar as cornerstones of the global financial system. We'll see how the Iran part of that works out. I'm a little skeptical that they're going to be taking much part in it. But in any case, it is a serious threat to the U.S. dollar. How can you protect your IRA or 401k from the fallout from this landmark announcement? Diversify with gold from Birch Gold Group. Historically, gold has been a safe haven in times of high uncertainty, which is right now. Get a free info kit on gold IRAs and decide for yourself if a tax-sheltered retirement account backed by physical precious metals is right for you. Text the word Knowles, K-N-W-L-E-S, to 989898. There is a monumental shift happening among nations that control 1/3 of the world's GDP. Kicks off July 6th. Arm yourself with information to diversify your retirement savings. Text Knowles to the number 989898. Claim your free info kit from Birch Gold. So, what kind of negotiation are we going to get? Here's President Trump on the subject.
Have you heard any signals or seen any messages from intermediaries that Iran wishes to de-escalate the conflict?
Yeah,
What have you heard? What have you heard from the Iranians?
they'd like to talk, but they should have done that before. I had 60 days, and they had 60 days, and on the 61st day, I said, we don't have a deal. They have to make a deal, and it's painful for both parties, but I'd say Iran is not winning this war, and they should talk, and they should talk immediately before it's too late.
This, for people who doubt Trump's dexterity when it comes to negotiating, some people say, oh, it's all just a TV show. It was all based on that show, The Apprentice. He's not really a great deal maker. I don't know. I think the past 4 or 5 days would suggest otherwise. Trump is willing to carry through on threats to bring people to the negotiating table. For some, for the real hardcore war hawks, the negotiations were always just a pretext for regime change. That was always a facade covering up the true aims, which was regime change. I don't think that's true of Trump. I think Trump really wants a deal. And Trump is willing to kill people if they who are threatening security and America's interests if they're not going to make a deal. This is what Trump said yesterday or 2 days ago. He said, I want a deal. Iran couldn't get to a deal. Now all the people I was negotiating with are dead. Is anyone else going to come make a deal with me? Because I'd like to make a deal. I don't want more people to die, but I'm quite serious. As he was so consistent about for 10 years now, I'm not going to let Iran get a bomb. Iran needs to prove to me that they're not going to develop a bomb. They at least need to agree to it in principle. And if they're not going to, I'm going to kill all of you. Because this is a priority for me, Donald Trump, and I'm the guy who just got elected with the popular vote. So deal with it. Now, one last point on ideology in the Iran conflict before we move on to the really important issues like Pride Night at Dodger Stadium. I think ideologues on both sides of the Iran conflict are vastly overestimating the effect of America's potential, even minor involvement in the conflict on Trump's approval ratings. I know this is the least popular position among the political nerds and fanatics on Twitter, but I'm right, which is there are people saying if Donald Trump doesn't, send in the entire U.S. military right now, this will destroy his legacy because he won't have stopped Iran's weapon and whatever. He had a chance to overthrow the mullahs. Yeah, okay, that's one side. Then the other side says, if Donald Trump in any way as commander-in-chief directs the U.S. military against America's enemies in the Middle East, if Donald Trump does that, he'll have destroyed the whole MAGA coalition. He'll have betrayed every promise he ever made. Give me a break. He can't get us involved in the Middle East. This is the guy who dropped the Moab in his first term, right? This is the guy who took out Iran's top general in his first term, right? This is the guy that destroyed ISIS in his first term. You remember him? This is the guy who campaigned on, I don't want to get us bogged down in the Middle East, but I'm not going to let Iran have a bomb. And the mullahs can keep ruling, but they can't cross America's red lines. It's that guy. These ideologues on both sides continue to misunderstand Trump and MAGA because they think that Trump and his movement, and it's his movement, it's not anyone else's movement. It's not the movement of his strategists. It's not the movement of his staff. It's not the movement of his pundits and activists and supporters. It's his movement. He did it. And everyone wants to claim credit for it, but he did it. No one else. Trump is not some egghead political theorist. He's just not that, which is a good thing. Now you're going to have ideologues on both sides say, well, he needs to be more ideologically pure. No, he doesn't. Nerds, shut up. He doesn't. The brilliance of the coalition, the only way he could assemble that coalition is by not being ideologically pure, by being more practical and prudential, by recognizing that politics is the art of inclusion, the art of the possible, the art of the second best, all the things that we've heard from American politicians in recent years, going all the way back to Clausewitz, okay? He's able to assemble this coalition of people who have some practical interests in common through appeals to important issues and through the magnetism of his own charisma. He was able to do that, and that's what he's doing now. If you want to understand Trump's agenda, focus less on nerdy political ideologies and theories and focus more on what he said on the Joe Rogan show, which is that the guy weaves. He just kind of weaves. One day you think he's the biggest hawk in the world. One day you think he's the biggest isolationist in the world. That's how he operates, okay? If that's too much for you, go pick a cookie cutter ideological candidate and lose elections, because that's not what Trump does. Okay, now people are asking. They're asking about all of this, this whole agenda, this why do they say, what's it really about? What's the substance? What's the, where's the beef? And I'll tell you where the beef is. It's at Good Ranchers. You need to go to goodranchers.com. Use promo code Knowles. Here's something that will blow your mind. Over 85% of the grass-fed beef in your grocery store is imported from overseas, where they got completely different safety standards than we do here in America. That's one reason to switch to Good Ranchers. You know why I support Good Ranchers? Yes, I love that it supports American ranchers. Yeah, I don't want all the imported beef with the weird safety standards. Yeah, I love that the prices cannot be beat from Good Ranchers. But the main reason why is because it is the best beef you are going to get. It is so freaking good. And the chicken is great. The chicken nuggets are exceptional. The best probably I've ever had. People are grilling all the time in the summer. It's just the greatest. And right now, when you use code Knowles, KNOWLES at goodranchers.com, you will save an extra $40 on your order. You can get that beef that is born, raised, and harvested right here in the USA. No antibiotics ever, no hormones added, no seed oils. And when you go to goodranchers.com right now, you will get $40 off and free meat for life using code Knowles, KNOWLES, Good Ranchers, American meat delivered. Moving on to really, really important issues. LA Dodgers just had Pride Night. Now, I'm not a huge Dodger fan. I'm a Yankee fan. And the Dodgers and the Yankees have had something of a rivalry going back many decades now. In fact, my grandfather was at the World Series game where Don Larson pitched the perfect game against the Dodgers, the only perfect game ever in World Series history. Anyway, I wasn't surprised that the LA Dodgers had a Pride Night and they put the rainbow flag on their hat. It's the LA symbol, and then but LA was in rainbow colors, not just the regular blue and white. So, not surprised. However, got to give credit to a Dodger here, Clayton Kershaw. Kershaw wore the hat. Look, he's a member of the team. He's got to wear the hat. If you're on a team, sometimes you got to go along with the team and you got to follow the leader, even if that contradicts your own individual will. I know we're all radical individualists these days and we're fair weather fans and we only go along with the team so long as they agree with us on every single thing. But then the minute that they in any way disagree, we all become radical individuals. Well, Kershaw, look, he's going to go along with his team. But he had a little twist. He put on the gay hat, but then right next to the rainbow, he wrote Genesis 9:12 through 16. I love it. I love it so much. That is, he said, I'll wear the rainbow, but I'm going to wear the rainbow to symbolize its original meaning. The meaning that we have understood it to have for our whole civilization, the meaning that it ought to reflect, and that at a deep level it does reflect, namely, that God will never again destroy the world in a flood. That's what in the book of Genesis, that's what when God shows the rainbow, he said that's what it's supposed to symbolize. That God will never again destroy the world in a flood because the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Now, in modern days, the rainbow is supposed to symbolize the imagination of man's heart being evil from his youth, and that being a good thing. Oh, isn't this great? It's just supposed to symbolize vice and self-indulgence. But Kershaw says, no, I'll wear the symbol, but I'm going to wear it to mean what it really symbolizes. It's a great way to handle Pride Night. This is a time to really focus in all of our political issues on how to balance competing goods. The goods of security on the one hand, the goods of freedom and independence on the other. That's what we're dealing with in some of these global conflicts, not just Iran, but also Ukraine and elsewhere. With Pride Night, Kershaw's got to deal with the good of being part of the team, the strength of the team, but also the good of the moral order, not violating the moral order just to go along with the mob, which would be lunacy. How do you do that? He found a way to do it. I love it. That's very practical, very prudential. Probably the Dodgers, the LGBT Gestapo running the LA Dodgers, they probably wish he hadn't worn the hat at all, because it calls more attention to the inanity and viciousness of the pride symbols. So, can you just not? No, sorry. You asked me to wear the rainbow. I'm wearing the rainbow. You know what it means? Goes back to the book of Genesis. Now let me tell you about the book of Leviticus. No, don't tell us about the book of Leviticus, please. Oh yeah, it's about chapter 18. You know that one? No, please. Speaking of June festivals, the New York Times. I meant to get to this yesterday, but I have to get to it before we move too far past Father's Day. The New York Times celebrated Father's Day in the most typical way by running a column from some angry liberal woman attacking her father. I'm not going to read you the whole thing, though it's a short little essay, and it's worth reading because of how awful it is. Here's just a little bit. This is how it opens. What my dad gave me. My father gave me his freckly skin, and I like him. I had melanoma. And like him, not I like him, she doesn't like him. And like him, I had melanoma. He gave me asthma and protruding elbows that are identical to his. He gave me reddish hair that's kindly reluctant to go gray. He gave me an aversion to drinking by not having one himself. I hate you, Dad. You're such an alcoholic. I hate you. You're drunk. He did not give me the seat next to him at the San Diego Chargers game. He had season tickets when I was a kid, but I only found out about it years later. He didn't even take me to that game that I didn't want to go to. He gave me the ability to talk to anyone because I couldn't stand the awkward silences he provided. He gave me really nice houses to grow up in, but we moved a lot for his work and things never seemed to be going well, so he gave me financial anxiety too. Yeah, I mean, he provided me all the material things I needed, and he worked really hard, but he's still a loser and he wasn't that good at his job. Even though, I mean, he did well in his career, but he's a loser. He's a complete loser. I hate him. And I had financial anxiety because, we were rich, but not as rich as I wanted to be. He gave me tools to withstand a sexist world. He would say, Hillary looks ugly in her pantsuits and her voice. Women don't belong on the golf course. Just pause here. All true. Find me the lie in any of those statements. This was my exposure therapy. He gave it generously. He didn't give me a response when I was little and watching a baseball game on TV with him. Couldn't be bothered to explain my petulant, incessant questions. That's what I took. These are the things I took from him. His Fox News, when I set up his cable. Yeah, my dad asked me to help him, and I took away his favorite TV channel. Goes on and on and on. And then you find out, this is a real killer, but halfway through the column, you find out her dad is still alive. It's not even like he's dead and she's attacking him. He's still alive. And apparently really likes her. And she goes on to it. She stuck him in a nursing home. And then she goes to visit him. And she admits, like, he's always so grateful when I visit him. And it's so sweet. And he really likes me, but I hate him. And you look through everything this guy supposedly did. And his great crime was being a hardworking father who supported his family, but was like kind of conservative. I don't even mean like conservative. Okay, I'm not talking like radical right. The guy wasn't reading Giovanni Gentile essays. He watched Fox News and read the Wall Street Journal. That's his great sin. And he didn't take his daughter to sports games that she almost certainly did not want to go to. She admits later, she doesn't even have any love of sports. She was just complaining that he didn't take her to a game she didn't want to go to. And he, what? And he made a lot of money, but not as much as she wanted. And then she stuck him in a home. But and the whole point is that she's a good daughter for forgiving him for the crimes that he didn't commit against her. All of liberalism, I say this without exaggeration and probably without exception, all of liberalism comes down to hating your dad. That's really what it's about. It comes down to hating your dad at a physical, temporal level, like your literal dad, like your immediate biological dad, or at the extreme, but to hating God, your father. Because liberalism ultimately is a turn away from classical philosophy, which says we're going to understand the world. Then modern philosophy, as Marx says in the thesis on Feuerbach, modern philosophy is about changing the world, not about understanding the world. It turns you away from obedience, recognizing hierarchies and following, being obedient to hierarchy and order, toward a radical leveling so that we can all do what we want. Turning away from the family as the basic building block of society toward the individual as the building block of society. And ultimately turning away from worshiping God and trying to serve him in this world and trying to unite your will to the will of God so that there's no difference between what you want for yourself and what God wants for you. Turning away from that, which is the basis of ethics and morality, turning away from that toward a self-deification that says that you are God. There's no gods, there's no kings, there's no only men, and we can do whatever we want. All of liberalism comes down to hating your dad. And that's true in the loftiest ways, the most abstract philosophical ways. And it's also true that people who write for the New York Times hate their dads. Okay. And that's really sad. You really feel bad for this father who clearly gave a lot to this ungrateful woman, this just witchy little woman. And then she decides to try to humiliate him in the pages of the New York Times. The only good thing you can say for her father here is at least no one reads the New York Times. at least he doesn't have to suffer that indignity. And another great thing you can say about the father is he ostensibly doesn't read it either, though he might, because he clearly loves his daughter, even though she doesn't like him. If you think Daily Wire Plus is just a subscription to watch some shows, think again. Daily Wire is building a home for people who've had enough lies, enough riots, enough cultural collapse disguised as compassion. We are here to fight. We're not just here to comment. We're not just here to criticize. We're here to fight. With journalism exposing the lies, with uncensored content that puts truth back in the spotlight. You are not just tuning in, you are linking arms with a community that fights back. And when we fight, we win. Join now at DailyWirePlus.com. My favorite comment yesterday is from the Drummers Workshop, Norm's Music. It says, most people don't get it. It's Jimmy Carter's fault. Yes! This is the thing. They think these issues just come out of nowhere. Especially these geopolitical issues, Ukraine, Russia war, Taiwan, which they'll see, or the Iran issue. This Iran issue has been festering since 1979, when Jimmy Carter stupidly let our ally, the Shah, fall. Same with the Panama Canal issue. President Trump wants us to get back to Panama Canal. That was also Jimmy Carter's fault. A lot of these issues, decades in the making, because of the fecklessness of mostly liberal politicians. All right. Speaking of paternal care, Justin Bieber might be placed in a conservatorship. So do we have, here we go. This is according to The Sun, so you know it's true, the entertainment editor there. Justin Bieber could be placed in a conservatorship by Haley if she can prove 3 points to court amid his bizarre behavior. Okay, so I don't know, I haven't followed this that closely because I don't follow celebrity gossip all that closely. But apparently Justin Bieber has been looking a little rough lately and behaving in erratic ways. And so there's some rumor that he might be placed in a conservatorship, like happened to Britney Spears, like happens to many people who are in pop music and who become super rich and famous and then go off the rails. At the time that Britney's conservatorship was dominating the news, there were people who said, we need to free Britney. She's being controlled by her dad, who's the conservator, and he's controlling her finances and even her freedom of movement, and we need to free Britney. And that reflected a misunderstanding of what freedom is. But ultimately, Britney was freed, and now she seems to be trapped in a prison of her own madness, and she posts videos dancing with knives and behaving in an erratic way. Maybe the same thing will happen to Bieber here. This is totally reflective of our politics right now. When you are sane and disciplined, freedom is in your hands. When you are insane and self-indulgent, freedom needs to be in someone else's hands. That's just how it works. And our founding fathers wrote about this and the framers of our Constitution, and they wrote about the nature of freedom. That when you are a disciplined person, when you subject your appetites to your rational will, when you have practiced good habits, when you can be trusted on your own, character is what you do when you think no one's watching. When you are that kind of person, then freedom is really in your hands. And you don't need a heavy government to enforce it, and you don't even need particularly heavy civic institutions. However, when you're undisciplined, when you're ignorant, when you're undisciplined, when you're given to vice, when you're addicted to things, when you're self-indulgent, the way to make you free is actually not to place freedom in your hands. The way to make you free is to place control of you in someone else's hands, someone else who can encourage you to get your act together and can teach you things and can help you to practice the habits of discipline that can perhaps one day allow you to have freedom in your own hands again. But that's it. Because freedom, as we've mentioned on the show a lot before, is not just neutrality and choosing. It is willing. It's how we will, and how we will stuff. I will that I'll drink this leftist ears tumbler. I will that I'll light this delicious Michael Knowles candle. The willing is predicated on knowledge. So that's what freedom is. In the pithy phrase of Lord Acton, it's to do what we ought, the right to do what we ought, not the ability to choose in what we wish. So Justin Bieber can be free in a sort of way if he's in a conservatorship, maybe. Britney Spears, when she was in a conservatorship, was more free than she is today when she's out of the conservatorship. Because today she's enslaved by all these vices and madness. That's it. It's not, there's no shortcut out of that. Liberalism tries to find a shortcut to that. Liberalism tries to have its cake and eat it too. Liberalism says, well, hold on, I don't want any external constraints and I don't want any internal constraints. And I'm just going to be totally self-indulgent. I'm going to make myself a god and I'm going to remake the whole world. And I'm going to go insane, ultimately. And then I'm not going to be free because I'm going to become a slave to all of these passions and vices that are totally irrational. Sorry, no shortcut, man. Now, speaking of show business, Katy Perry is attacking Trump on another issue that he's catching flack for, the deportations, because she says that illegal aliens are being hunted like criminals in their ancestral home. Here, I have her post. Los Angeles has lived under three flags: Spain, Mexico, and the United States. That land has seen borders shift, power change hands, and yet the people, especially the brown and indigenous people, have always been there. I don't know about that. We did deport, like 1 million people or something during Operation Wetback in the 1950s. The people have moved around a little bit. And then when the Spanish came and met the indigenous, that actually created a new kind of race of people, the Hispanics, the Latinos. Just not fully indigenous, not fully European, you can't just take the one and not the other. Anyway, she goes on. Indigenous people have always been there, planting roots, building lives, raising families, and now in 2025, the descendants of those same communities are being hunted like criminals in their own ancestral home. Wow. Wow, man. This presumes a lot about ancestral homes. First of all, it means that someone who is part indigenous and part white is truly indigenous and not at all white. And the good guys are the indigenous and the bad guys are the white guys from Spain, which doesn't, but the people are actually both. Second, she acknowledges that borders of sovereignty, territory has changed hands, but then she refuses to accept the political consequences of that. Third, she's playing a little loose with the phrase ancestral home. You know what my ancestral home is? You might be tempted to say merry old England. You might be tempted to say the Mezzogiorno, Sicily or Calabria. But no, my ancestral home really is probably Iraq. Isn't it? Isn't that true of all of us? All of us white people? Because don't we come from Mesopotamia, from the Levant? So what if I just roll up to Iraq and I start demanding stuff? I say, hey, this is my ancestral home. Hey, get out of the way, you guys wearing towels and stuff. Get out of here. This is my place. Plant the American flag there, start lighting a Mayflower cigar. Maybe pour a nice glass of scotch. Hey, I know you modern inhabitants don't believe in drinking scotch, but listen, this is my ancestral home. How would that go? I don't think that would go very well. None of these arguments really mean much of anything that you're hearing from the left, other than America always has to be bad. At the national level, America always has to be bad. At the racial level, white people always have to be bad. At the, political, philosophical level, the truly native populations always have to be bad, and the migrants, and those always have to be good. That's just all it is. So what the left is advancing here is conclusions in search of arguments. And they'll change the arguments depending on the day. Just like, you think about LGBT. The conclusion is we need to upend traditional sexual morality. The argument used to be there are men and there are women, and some men like men and some women like women, and it's how you're born. You're born that way, and that's just how it is, and your sexual orientation is immutable, and that's why we need to upend traditional sexual morality. And then 5 seconds later, they said, also, sexual orientation is not immutable. Sex is not even immutable. There aren't really men and there aren't really women. And some men might like men, but they also might like women, or women might like men, or the women might become men and the men might become women. And anyway, none of the previous principles about sex we told you were true. But the conclusion is we need to upend traditional sexual morality. That's it. That's all the left plays with. Because for the left, politics is not a matter of reasoned debate or progression from first principles in an orderly way. It's just people clubbing each over the head with sticks. And so they've come to their conclusion. They made up their mind, and they're going to find out any way to try to defend it. Okay, which brings us back, since we're talking about Iraq and unreasonable politics, this brings us back to the Middle East. Trump seems quite offended by some of the debate going on the right. In fact, he's even going after Tucker, who's been a strong Trump defender. Actually, like a lot of people on the right, Tucker has been very pro-Trump, and he's spoken at Trump rallies. He's also expressed a lot of skepticism of Trump or hostility. But that's true of a lot of people on the right. That's not just Tucker. But now they seem to be at a tough point in their relationship. Trump tweets out, "Somebody please explain to kooky Tucker Carlson that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. America first means many great things, including the fact that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Make America great again." Trump wants to emphasize this point, which, in his defense, he made on the campaign trail all the time, and a lot of people just didn't want to hear it. And I love Tucker. And I like a lot of the figures, many of whom are skeptical of Trump right now. And, I even recognize that as we're talking about prudence and practicality in foreign policy, we need to be a little circumspect, and we need to temper expectations, and we need to make sure that we know exactly what we're doing when we get involved in places around the world. But all of that said, this is Trump's movement. He assembled the coalition. He got elected. He won the popular vote. Doesn't mean we don't ask questions. Doesn't mean we don't advocate certain sides. But I think it does mean that we should not be turning on Trump at the drop of a hat, as some people have been inclined to do for 10 years. The walls are closing in. Now I'm done with Trump. Now I regret all my support. Now. And the reason is not that we blindly follow anyone. We don't put our trust in princes. It's just that I think Trump has a lot of credibility, especially on foreign policy. Trump is probably the best foreign policy president of my lifetime. George H.W. Bush, I was very little when George H.W. Bush was president. He was pretty good, but Trump might be better. He's certainly better than Clinton and Bush II and Obama and Biden. And so he's done very, very well on foreign policy. He's done very well on domestic policy, for that matter, too. And I just think he's kind of earned the right to have his supporters, at least, take a few breaths for a few days and just let him cook a little bit and see how things shake out. Because the things they're accusing him of right now have not actually come to pass. So maybe let's not be like, Wile E. Coyote here with the Roadrunner and constantly falling into all of these traps, which many ideologues around the country are trying to lay for him and for us. The rest of the show continues now. You do not want to miss it. Become a member. Use code Knowles, Canada, WLES, at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans.